Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans. Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan.
This is Jake.
And this is Mac.
And this is our Banzuke review for the Hatsu 2021 Basho. Sorry, this one's coming out a little bit late. We had some other end-of-the-year stuff we wanted to prioritize ahead of this one. But hey, we're still getting out before the tournament starts, which is all you can really hope for. But joining us today, we have a special guest joining us from the Tachiai blog. It is Leonid. Leonid, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So what is your specialty over at the Tachiai blog?
Yeah, so I write as LK Sumo, which was kind of what I originally made up quickly when I started commenting on the blog a few years ago. And I mainly do the Banzuke predictions and Banzuke reviews with occasionally, other pieces on basically Banzuke movement, Ozeki promotions, Yokozuna promotions, things like that.
Yeah, and he is way better at it than I am. So we figured we would have him on, and he could teach us a few lessons about the Banzuke, and hopefully get me on a better path than I am currently on. Although this one I did depends on how you want to score it. I either did pretty decent or just god awful. But
there is no in between.
No, not with how this one ended up. So we will start, as always, with the Yokozuna. Hakuho on the east, Kagayaki on the west. Done, over. Let's move on to Ozeki, where east one, we have Takakeisho, where he was last time, I believe. And west one, we have Shodai jumping up over Asanoyama, who is east two, based on the fact that Shodai had 3 wins compared to Asanoyama's 1 win in the last tournament. So they just shuffle around the Ozeki based on who had the best record last time. And then we get to Sekiwake, where we do have a little something interesting here. On the east side, we have Teru no Fuji, and on the west side, we have Taka no Sho. So this is where basing some of my predictions on history went well for me on this Banzuke, because despite Taka no Sho having a winning record as the Sekiwake West and the Sekiwake East, Mitake Yumi being demoted, Taka no Sho was not promoted over to Sekiwake East, which is what I predicted based on looking at past similar situations from the early 2000s and 1990s, since we hadn't had a similar situation where a Komosubi had a much better record than like the Sekiwake West, and so he overtook Taka no Sho to get that Sekiwake East spot. And then we get down to the trouble zone. This is the main reason why we needed to get Leonid in here to set me straight. We get to Komosubi. We're on the east side. I had Takayasu. Boom. Nailed it. And then on the west side, we have Mitake Yumi. Notably absent are Daisho and Hokuto Fuji, who I both predicted those guys would be creating new Komosubi slots. Leonid, why was I wrong in my thinking here when all of history told me that, yeah, these guys should belong in the Komosubi ranks?
So like you said with the Sekiwake situation, there are not a lot of instances where somebody, between M1 and M4 puts up a lot of wins and there is no open Komosubi slot. Right, so those are the only ones that are relevant because most of the time they can just go up to Komosubi or even Sekiwake normally because the incumbents had losing records. So I guess there were a couple of things to consider. I think a lot of people thought that Mitake Yumi should be booted all the way down to Magashira with his 7 and 8 record at Sekiwake, but I would argue that's something that they used to do. I don't remember exactly when it switched, but I think it's something like the last 55 instances of a Sekiwake going 7 and 8.
It was like the early 90s.
So since then, right there, we've had a ton of examples where they just get booted down to Komosubi, pretty much no matter what. And I found instances, I think, where there was a Magashira won West with 9 wins, who didn't get the slot over the Sekiwake going 7 and 8. So I think that's almost a rule now in their minds. Kind of like if you are a Kadoban Ozeki and you get fewer than 8 wins, you go down to Sekiwake, and if you're 0 and 15, you go down to Sekiwake. It just doesn't. You just don't drop any lower. Mm-hmm. So then, given that, I was pretty sure that Mitake Umi will account for the second slot. The question was, do you create extra slots? And I think, again, like up until at least the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s, there are not a lot of examples to look at. They would create these extra slots pretty easily. And in a heartbeat, both Daisha and Hokuto Fuji would have gone up to Komusubi to East and West, or they might have reshuffled and made Mitake Umi Komusubi to West and put them above them. But at some point in in the early 2000s, it seems to have changed. So there are only a couple of instances of this. One of which was trying to remember this. So there are several instances of Megashira 1 West going 9 and 6 and only sliding over to Megashira 1 East. There is Koto Shogiku, which I think you had mentioned on your Banzuke prediction episode, who went from Megashira 2 East to Megashira 1 East with 10 wins. And of course, there is Hokuto Fuji himself, who a couple of years ago went from Megashira 3 West to Megashira 1 East despite putting up 11 wins. So what that kind of suggests is that nowadays they won't do it unless they view it as a force sort of situation. Somebody did so well, or they did well enough at Megashira 1 East where there is really nowhere to promote them to except Komusubi, and only when they have to will they create those extra ranks. Yeah, so I think the one interesting scenario was, I guess it was after Aki, right, last year in 2019, when they created the two extra slots. And the confusing thing was that Asanayama got one of them for 10 wins, right, at Megashira 2, which certainly made you think that Daisha should get it this time. But my explanation for it is that Hokuto Fuji got 9 wins at Megashira 1 East, and so they felt like they had to promote them. And then Asanayama, by our usual numerical criteria, with 10 wins at Megashira 2, had a stronger case than Hokuto Fuji did. So they ended up feeling like they had to push both of them up. There was no other way to do it. So that's kind of what I went with this time. I felt like since the records weren't an absolute force, they just toss them up to Megashira 1, which is a decent promotion, and certainly very unlucky for them that in this particular Banzuke there were no spots for them in Sanyaku, but that's just kind of how the Banzuke luck rolls.
Yeah. So
anarchy. That's all this is boiling down to. There is no order. There is no justice. This just complete chaos.
Yeah, I do want to take a moment to hang my head in sorrow for Hokuto Fuji, who has got to be the most unlucky, well-performing Joy Rikshi ever. Because, as you mentioned, Leonid, he had that 11-4 record from Magashira 3, where he only got promoted up to Magashira 1. The only time in history of sumo wrestling that has ever happened. And then he had this 11-4 from Magashira 4, where he only got promoted up to Magashira 1. Once again, the only time in the history of sumo wrestling that has ever happened.
And also of the 3 guys in the 2000s who got stuck at Megashira 1 East after going 9 and 6 at Megashira 1 West, he's one of them.
Yeah.
So like of all these, of all the handful of instances we have of people getting stuck, he features 3 times on that list.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
So yeah, I missed big on Komusubi. So Mitake Umi is getting that West slot. I missed him by 2 order ranks. because I would have had him as the lowest ranked Komosubi when I brought Daieisho and Hokuto Fuji in. So for that reason, I'm going to give him the luck of the Banzuke candidate, even though that does seem to be a hard and fast rule. Just seems lucky that a 7 and 8 guy gets the preferential treatment over the 11 and 4 and 10 and 5 guys. Whereas when we go down to Magashira 1 on the east side, we will have Hokuto Fuji, and on the west side, we will have Daieisho. Gonna make both of those guys snub of the Banzuke candidates. But what does this mean for my prediction? Since I had 2 extra Komosubi ranks, everybody is going to appear to be 1 rank too high in my predictions than what I said. So I had predicted that Takeda Fuji would be Magashira 1 East, but he's actually Magashira 2 East. So if you're going off of the guess the Banzuke game, this is very, very bad for me because everybody's just going to be at the wrong rank. And so the only way I'm going to get something right below Komosubi is if I predicted the wrong order and it just happened to end up in the right spot on the actual Banzuke. But for our scoring system, where we really only care about the order the Rikishi are in and how far off I am from their actual placement in the order, actually not bad at all for me, because we don't care what the name of their rank is. We just care what order they're in and how far they are off. So in those regards, this is one of my better predictions that we've ever had here, which is a shame that it happened. It's a little flawed in my eye since everybody's going to be at the wrong ranks, but the order's still there, and it's the thought that counts, right?
No.
Yeah, so like I said, Hokuto Fuji and Daieisho both making history, where Hokuto Fuji, the smallest jump ever for an 11 and 4 Rikishi from M4, and Daieisho ties with two others for the smallest jump after a 10 and 5 record from Magashira 2. So let's just move on to Magashira 2. On the east side, we've got Takeda Fuji, and on the west side, we have Wakataka Kage. We're saying that I got both of those predictions correct because they are in the correct order of the Banzuke that I predicted them to be in, but they are not at the correct numerical rank. And then we go to Magashira 3. On the east side, we have Koto Shoho, who will be at his career high. And on the west side, we've got Onosho, who, Leonid, you told me Onosho needs to be a candidate for snub of the Banzuke.
Yeah, I mean, he gets an extra half rank demotion because he was ranked at Megashira 2 East and he was 7 and 8. So being 3 East would be reasonable, but I'm not really sure why they felt compelled to push him all the way down to 3 West, especially when by our usual numerical guidelines, Koto Shoho should be behind them. So I'm not sure what it was that caused them to either push down Onosho or push up Koto Shoho from a Megashira 5 West with an 8 and 7 record, where numerically he ought to be Megashira 4 West. So there's a pretty significant rank difference, predicted rank difference there, and yet they flipped them. So I'm not really sure what was behind that.
Now, do you think that the Banzuke committee takes any preference into Onosho has been up to this spot before, and we know that he's not really going to perform and jump up to the Komosubi Sekiwake ranks, whereas Koto Shoho, he's a new bright star up-and-comer. Do you think that takes any precedent in their mind in how they put these guys on here, or is it just throw your hands up and who knows why they did this?
Yeah, I mean, I throw my hands up and say, who knows why they did this? Because I'd say generally it's kind of the other way. They really give a lot of benefit of the doubt to incumbents. So if somebody has been Komosubi before, or Sekiwake before, they're much more likely to put them up there or put them up in the Joy than put up somebody who they view as untested. And I think that applies kind of up and down the Banzuke. Same sort of deal as the new Ozeki being the lowest ranked Ozeki, even if they performed much better than the incumbent Ozeki in the previous tournament. So I really don't understand this one. It just seems like kind of a departure from any reasonable rules or order that I have in my head.
Yeah. So this Koto Shoho being ahead of Onosho is why nobody will ever get an exactly perfect Banzuke prediction.
Yep. So I think on Sumo Forum, the Banzuke aficionados talk about how they think the Banzuke committee does like one random thing or a couple of random things every time just to make sure that none of the predictions are right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I don't know that I subscribe to that, but I think they may indeed pride themselves on being not completely predictable.
Hey, that's petty enough that I like that. So yeah, we need to give a shout out to Mac, who I believe had a perfect prediction up until the Magashira 3 rank. Is that correct, Mac?
That is correct. N3. So I flipped Koto Shoho and Onosho around.
Gotcha. So your computer told you that Terano Fuji would be ahead of Takanosho in this situation, and that there wouldn't be any like extra Komosubi ranks created or anything like that.
It was very weird that my computer was telling me this, but I had to trust the numbers and trust the math because, like you, Takanosho should have gotten the slot over, but it was a little rule and a couple different variables that I had calculated in there. It's like, okay, beware of this, because it happened with Chio no Kuni in the last one, where I was off on how that one was going to go. So I thought back more on this, looked at the numbers again, and was like, all right, then I would assume Terano Fuji gets the first slot. So, yeah, based off of that.
All right. So let's go down to Magashira 4 East, where we will have Tochinoshin. He will be the last guy in the Joy for this tournament. And then we move on to the mid Banzuke, where we have Tamawashi coming in at Magashira 4 West. Both of those guys ending up where you would expect them to. Magashira 5, on the east side, you have Endo, and on the west side, you have Okinoumi. Once again, these are just two guys that ended up where we expected them to go. There's a little bit of hesitancy on my part to jump Endo ahead of Okinoumi. I did end up getting that correct, but I don't know. I'm kind of confused as to why it actually came out that way, because you might think that Okinoumi would get the preferential treatment over Endo since he was up in the Joy, and Endo only had an 8-7 record for Magashira 7. And I think Endo was on the west side. So I don't know. It seems like a decent jump for Endo to get over ahead of Okinoumi on this. Do you have any thoughts on why that happened, Leonid?
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that it's a matter of making sure Okinoumi gets a decent sized drop, because he was at 3 West and he went 6 and 9, which numerically would put him down at 6 West. So I think only dropping him 1.5 ranks after a 6 and 9 record, maybe they felt like was a little too lenient. That's what I went with. That's how I rationalized that prediction.
Yeah,
which turned out to be correct in this instance.
Mm-hmm. And then let's move on to Magashira 6. On the east side, we have Ryuden, which is where I predicted him to be. But then we have Kagayaki, who is getting a luck of the Banzuke candidacy thrown his way, because the man just can't keep getting away with this. Kagayaki seems to consistently not drop as far as his record indicates that he should. So here he's only dropping 3 ranks after a 5 and 10 record. And this is something I think I noticed kind of with Shodai a couple of years ago, where it seemed like he was consistently getting very preferential treatment from the Banzuke committee. So hopefully that's not a sign of things to come for Kagayaki. Otherwise, this podcast is going to have a whole lot of crow to eat. Where Shodai got the preferential treatment, then eventually boosted up to Ozeki. So hopefully the same thing doesn't happen to Kagayaki. But just some recent history with him. Kagayaki's 5 and 10 record from M3, they decided was better than Tobizaru's 6 and 9 record from M4, even though they both were like fully in the Joy, faced a full complement of Sanyaku Rikshi. I think typically you would expect Kagayaki to drop below Tobizaru in this instance, wouldn't you, Leonid?
Yeah, I mean, I had Kagayaki at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 at 7 West, which I think is where he belongs, because numerically and by any other argument, he should be behind Ryuden, Meisei, and Tobizaru. And how you order those 3 guys, you could argue about, but I think, like you said, pushing him above Tobizaru doesn't make any sense. Pushing him above Meisei and splitting Ryuden and Meisei, who both went 9 and 6 at Magashira 10, just to accommodate Kagayaki, who should really be lower down. I think is very hard to explain. So he must have a powerful advocate on the Banzuke committee, or this is another one of their like, haha, you can't guess this sort of decisions. I think that's probably the hardest placement for me to explain, because it's off by a good full rank, and I really can't find an explanation for it.
Yeah, it defies all thoughts and expectations for him, and it's something that has happened over past few basho. So maybe I need to institute a Kagayaki rule where he just gets ranked one ahead of where I think he should be.
Yeah, I mean, like we just said with Naomi, right? They are trying to ensure that guys get something not too far off from the demotion they deserve, and again, that runs counter to what they did with Kagayaki.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to Magashira 7 East, where we do have Meisei there, who I am making him a snub of the Banzuke candidate just because, I mean, Kagayaki is in Meisei's spot on this Banzuke. There's no two ways around that. And then we have Tobi Zaru at Magashira 7 West. At this point, I do want to point out that I'm just very happy with where I'm at in my Banzuke predicting, where I am questioning Kagayaki being off by one full rank, and that's like my biggest miss on the entire Banzuke, is somebody being off by a full rank. Now I have 6 guys off by a full rank, but but that's better than 6 guys being off by a rank and a half or 2 ranks. So just getting a lot more precise with the bunching of the placements of the Rikshi on here. Yeah, of the screw-ups.
The screw-ups.
And just going to take that time to pat myself on the back, because nobody else is going to do it for me. And I need a little bit of ego boost after that Komosubi debacle and how bad my Guess the Banzuke ranking is on this one. So just wanted to stop down and say, you know what, Ryan, you're getting better. Keep doing you. You'll get there, buddy.
Hang in there.
I love your emotional pep talks.
Hey, somebody's got to do it, and it sure as hell ain't going to be you guys.
Oh, no.
True. Oh, true.
All right, then we go over to Magashira 8. On the east side, we have Tokushoryu, placed exactly where I thought he would be. And then my first of 2 moments where I just like, God damn it, Ryan, you dumbass. So Kiribayama on the west side. And so I was debating on the preview episode whether it would be Kiribayama at Magashira 8 West or Chiyo no Kuni at Magashira 8 West. And I ended up going with Chiyo no Kuni. And because my entire argument was, well, joy bias can't always win. And I think I was just trying to pinpoint that like random thing that they do, where I'm trying to make the perfect prediction. And to do that, you need to predict stupid things. And so this is one of the stupid things that I predicted. And Jake even called me out on it, because I had Jake checking all my logic as I was explaining why I'm predicting things on the preview episode. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. This is kind of contradicting yourself. So I apologize, Jake. You were right. I should have had Kiribayama at Magashira 8 West and Chiyo no Kuni at Magashira 9 East, where they actually fell. So that's 2 perfect predictions I cost myself out of sheer stupidity.
I accept your apology.
And if there is going to be a joy bias anywhere, an M1, a Magashira 1 East with a really, with a double digit, in this case, 12 loss record, is where it's going to manifest itself when you're contrasting them with M14.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've noticed that the guys that have the really bad records in the Joy, like Magashira 1 and 2, I think those are the guys that tend to get the most benefit of the doubt in like being ranked ahead of people that numerically you might think they wouldn't be ranked ahead of. So that's something I need to keep an eye out on, is that those guys with like the 3 and 12s and 4 and 11s at Magashira 1 and 2, they're not going to drop as far as you think they should. Even if you're considering joy bias, there's like extra joy bias for them, I think. And so we go to Magashira 9. We're on the east side, as I mentioned. We have Chiyo no Kuni, and then we have Miyogiryu, who I'm making a luck of the Banzuke candidate again. He's another guy that just does not drop down as far the Banzuke as he probably should. So he's only dropped down 4 ranks after a 4 and 11 record. So if we look at Kiribayama, he dropped down 7 ranks after a 3 and 12 record. A little bit of an imbalance there. He easily could have been knocked down below like Shima no Umi or maybe even like Aoyama, but definitely Shima no Umi. And I kind of looked at it. The average landing spot for a Magashira 5 that had a 4-11 record in the past 20 years is Magashira 11. So Miyogiryu ended up 2 ranks above that and very easily could have ended up at Magashira 10 without even struggling to think of how he ended up there. So Leonid, why do you think Miyogiryu got so lucky here at Magashira 9?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I had him at 10 West. So I don't have a good explanation. I think it's another one of these Kagayaki situations where I don't get it.
So at the bottom of the Mac, how have you been doing? How's your Banzuke been looking like from Magashira 4 to Magashira 9?
Magashira 4 to Magashira 9, I had 2 out of place by 3 positions. So for mine, I had, just chiming in with where you guys were thinking, I had Tokushoryu as Magashira 6 West, and I had Kagayaki as Magashira 8 East, and I got those flipped around.
Gotcha.
Which doesn't make sense, because Kagayaki should have been ranked lower.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, that was another one of those infuriating things.
Yeah. Hey, just all the more reason for this podcast to not like Kagayaki. He's ruining our bond case. So let's move on to Magashira 10 on the east side. We have the aforementioned Shima no Umi. He is jumping up 10 ranks after his 11-4 record. And then we have Aoyama at Magashira 10 West. I missed these guys by 1 order rank apiece, but that's just because I had both of those guys ahead of Miyogiryu. So no real confusion as to why those guys ended up where they are at. It's just the Banzuke committee was stupid with Miyogiryu. So then
blame the Banzuke committee. That seems to be working.
Hey, it's never failed me before. They have never come on this podcast to say, no, Ryan, here's where you were wrong and not us. This is on the Banzuke committee until they tell me otherwise.
Okay, so that's an open invitation to the Banzuke committee. Please come. Please tell us how wrong we are.
Oh, absolutely. If anybody on the Banzuke committee wants to get on my English language sumo podcast, they are welcome. And let's move down to Magashira 11, where on the east side we will have Chiyo Tairyu jumping up 4 ranks from Magashira 15, and we have Koto Eko, who is dropping down 2 ranks from Magashira 9. So on the preview episode, I had debated about who should be ranked higher, Chiyo Tairyu or Ichinojo. Both of these guys had winning records, and kind of like by the math, they deserve to be at the same rank. And I decided to place Ichinojo higher in my prediction because he was the higher ranked guy, but he had an 8-7 record from Magashira 13 compared to Chiyo Tairyu's 9-6 record from Magashira 15. So it looks like the Banzuke committee favored the better record between those two Rikishi as opposed to the guy who had the higher rank. Is that something you consistently see, Leonid, where they favor the higher record when we're at this portion of the Banzuke, or can it go either way?
I think that's right. I think higher up on the Banzuke, they tend to favor rank, and I think lower down on the Banzuke, when the ranks are pretty comparable, they tend to favor the record. And there might have been an East-West thing also going on in this case, since Chiyo was at 15 East and Ichinojo was at 13 West. So I think if you take those half ranks into account, this actually makes sense.
Okay. The one thing that kind of confuses me though is like Koto Eko kind of being splitting those two guys. Is that something where if you kind of look at the half ranks, that is explained why Koto Eko is in between them?
I had them behind Ichinojo. I had those two. I had those two guys at I guess 11 is where we're at.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're looking at, okay, we're going to place the guy with the best record, if they all deserve to be the same rank, which I think we agree all 3 of these guys do, if we're going to place the guy with the best record, it should have been Chiyo Tairyu, then Ichinojo, then Koto Eko. Maybe it's some weird thing where
it could be like a mid Banzuke for Koto Eko versus lower Banzuke for Ichinojo, and so he gets the bump from that. I'm not really sure exactly how they tier them beyond sort of the joy and bottom of the Banzuke, and exactly where those lines get drawn.
Yeah. Okay. So we do drop down to Magashira 12 East, where I have Ichinojo. He's one of the guys that I missed by a full numerical rank and 2 order ranks because, like I said, I predicted him to be ahead of Chiyotairyu and Kotoeko. And then we have on the west side of Magashira 12, Teritsu Yoshi, who's dropping down after a 5-10 record from Magashira 8. And so on the preview episode, I debated between Teritsu Yoshi and Aqua about who would go at this Magashira 12 West spot. And I ended up going with Aqua because he had the better record. Kind of like what we just talked about. But then they gave it to Teritsu Yoshi, who is ranked higher. So explain that to me, Leonid. How did that happen?
I think it's exactly like I had both of those. Those are like I have this whole chunk of the Banzuke where I have a bunch of consecutive half rank switches, and it's Ichinojo, Kotoeko, and Aqua Teritsu Yoshi are 2 of them, where they in each case they belong in the same spot. And I think it's the mid Banzuke losing record beating out the low Banzuke winning record. I think that's what's going on. I think when you're comparing, an M15 to an M13, they're sort of in the same tier. But when you're comparing an M8 and M16, there is a tier thing that went the other way. And I can't tell if that's a super consistent thing from Banzuke to Banzuke, or if it's just something they did this time in this part of this Banzuke.
So in addition to like the clear Sanyaku bias that Mitake Yumi got on this one, the Joy bias, which we've talked about forever, the anti-Juryo bias, it's just kind of like a level of tiers where like the strength of your schedule kind of will determine, in like a tiebreaker scenario, the higher strength of schedule is going to be ranked ahead of the guy with the lower strength of schedule.
Right. And what's tricky is like exactly how big a rank disparity do you need to trigger that? It didn't happen with Chiyotairyu and Ichinojo, but how close is close enough? And I don't know that I have that worked out at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting. That'll be something I might need to try to track in the future and just kind of see where their logic is coming from on those issues. But yeah,
don't do it, Ryan. It doesn't make sense, because the logic you try to create would tell you that Aqua M12 East looks great. That looks fine. That makes sense for his record. But no, then you assign preference to the guys from Juryo, like Midori Fuji and Akiseyama, and then you factor in the Chiyonokuni factor from the last tournament. You think, oh yeah, they're gonna jump up all the way. Of course that's gonna happen. No, it's a lie. Don't believe it.
Yeah, so this is the part of the Banzuke where your prediction started to fall apart a little bit more, isn't it, Mac?
Yeah, my computer hit a segmentation error, and things were crashing and failing, so I just kind of threw things in. No, I have no idea. I have no idea how this is figured out.
No, I think through this conversation, we're just finding out that nobody has any idea how this is figured out.
I will say, this time, I was able to get the right Sumatori in the list.
Yes.
Because in the last one, I jumped other people up that didn't have a prayer. But this time, I at least have the right Sekitori on the list. So M17 and up, I'm like, okay, at least the names kind of match somewhat across the board.
Yeah, you were able to nail the Juryo Makuuchi exchange on this one.
Yes.
So let's move down to Magashira 13 on the east side. We do have Aqua, who is going to be there after a career high because he had that 9-6 record from Magashira 16. And so we look at Aqua versus Teritsu Yoshi, Magashira 16 schedule versus a Magashira 8 schedule. If we're looking at based on strength of schedule and otherwise they deserve to be at the same rank, makes sense that Teritsu Yoshi's ahead of Aqua there. And then on the west side, we have Chiyoshoma. And so I know I had debated between Chiyoshoma here or Midori Fuji, and they ended up giving Chiyoshoma probably a more than favorable rank bump, 3 ranks up for him after an 8-7 record, because the only thing more real than Joy bias is the anti-Juryo bias, and Midori Fuji was a victim of that, and so he is going to be ranked below Chiyoshoma here. So that is something that I did accurately predict there, having Chiyoshoma at Magashira 13 West. And we go down to Magashira 14, which is the other spot where I just need to kick myself in the butt, because damn, I had this right in my draft before we recorded the preview episode, and then just while we were recording the preview episode, it wasn't even like good logic. I went back and listened to it. It wasn't like I had talked myself into anything fantastical. I was just like, no, Midori Fuji ahead of Hoshoryu here. I don't know why I did that. I had it right before we were recording. I should have just left it how it was. I would have had 2 more perfect predictions with Hoshoryu on the east side, Magashira 14 east, and Midori Fuji at Magashira 14 west. So Midori Fuji is going to be making his Makuuchi division debut at Magashira 14 east after he won the Juryo Yusho with a 10-5 record from Juryo 2. So just another place where I just got to kick myself in the butt for a dumb decision. I'm sure Leonid had these guys in the exact right order here.
I had Hoshoryu and Chiyoshima flipped, but I did have I did have Midori Fuji at 14 west. And
Show off.
I think it's actually a little. I think they've actually gotten a little more generous with the Juryo guys. If you look at some of the real veterans on Sumo Forum who play GTB and have done it for a long time, a lot of them had Midori Fuji and Akisayama dead last. They had them 16 west.
Really?
16 west and 17 east. And I think they're past Banzuke where the guys above them, like, will come to the Kotonawaka Yutakayama Kaisei. And one way to solve having one of those guys underranked is just to push them all above Midori Fuji. Maybe you wouldn't have pushed Sadanumi above him, but I think on a lot of past Banzuke, that's what they would have done. Where if you have to, inconvenience the Makauchi incumbents at all, you instead just push down the Juryo guys as far down as they need to go.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely learned, because when I first started doing the Banzuke predictions and I was looking at like past placements where they brought up a Juryo guy, and I was seeing like Kakuryu get jumped up to like Magashira 8 or 9 after a 9-6 record from Juryo 1. And I was thinking, oh wow, yeah, they'll really go nuts with these guys and just send them way far up. So I know, like with Shimano Ume's debut, I missed him by like 8 ranks because I had him 4 numerical ranks higher than he should be, because they just don't do that with the Juryo Rikishi anymore. They really rein in where they're going to debut on the Banzuke, it seems like, nowadays.
Yeah, agreed.
Then we get to Magashira 15, where on the east side we have Yutakayama, and on the west side we have Kotonowaka. So this is another instance of them splitting up a pair of Rikishi with the same record from the same rank, because you had Yutakayama and Kaisei were both Magashira 12 that had 6-9 record, and then you had Kotonowaka, who is a Magashira 14 with a 7-8 record. And so the Banzuke committee has decided to place Kotonowaka between these two guys, Yutakayama and Kaisei. So Leonid, you and I had talked a little bit before we started recording about why we think that might have happened in this instance. Do you want to explain why we think that this happened this time?
Yeah, and I mean, I went back and forth on this one because it makes, like, Yutakayama should be ranked ahead of Kotonowaka, and obviously he's going to be ranked ahead of Kaisei since they had the same record at the same rank and he was on the east side. But Kaisei versus Kotonowaka is really a coin flip. And so I went through a bunch of drafts where I had Kotonowaka behind both of them, Kotonowaka ahead of both of them. And I was tempted to split them, but I don't like doing it like you don't like doing it. So I didn't. And I went with Kotonowaka above both of them, which is a little harsh on Kaisei. And I mean, I think so my kind of interpretation of this is that the Banzuke committee goes through exactly that exercise, and there are people arguing for Kotonowaka ahead of both of them, and there are people arguing for Kotonowaka behind both of them, and they end up splitting the difference as a compromise. So that's kind of the best I can come up with, because you see it happen a lot, and kind of in that situation where you could reasonably make a case either way. Which doesn't, of course, apply to what happened with Kagayaki higher up on the Banzuke.
I could see it like, okay, yeah, I don't like it, but I get it. The Kagayaki one is like, I don't get it, and I definitely don't like it.
Yep.
All right, so we jump down to Magashira 16. We're on the east side. We do have Kaisei, and just like I'm going to say Meisei was a snub of the Banzuke candidate, Kaisei is too, just because don't split up those pairs. It's just not right. And then we have Akisayama at Magashira 16 West. So when I was putting together this Banzuke the prediction for this Banzuke, I all had Yutakayama, Kotonowaka, Kaisei, and Akiseyama all deserving of the same rank based on their previous rank and their record. And I was just a silly Billy for not placing Akiseyama at the bottom of that list in what order they would be ranked. And because I had Akiseyama ahead of Kotonowaka in my predictions, and that was just dumb to do because, as I've said, anti-Jiryo bias rules everything.
Yeah, and I mean Kotonowaka by his record, right, placement deserved to be 15 West, and there is no way they were going to push him down further than he deserved to make room for a Jiryo guy.
Yeah, yep. I should have known that. That's a lesson that I apparently need to learn many times over. But you know what? It's better just being off by a half rank with these Jiryo guys than off by 2-3 full ranks, which I've done in the past.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
It might be okay for you and your computer, who's only in its like fourth basho of existence, and we're gonna get to it. But your computer did just damn fine on its own.
That's true.
Not okay for me. I've been doing this for over 2 years now. I need to learn these lessons.
The machines will win, Ryan. You just have to know what to tell them.
It depends on how you're grading it, if the machine wins or not. Then at Magashira 17 East, our final rank, we have Sado no Umi, and we're going to end this on a high note for me and my prediction, because I had said on the preview episode that Sado no Umi was the clear-cut guy to be the bottom-ranked guy on the Banzuke, which he turned out to be. So ended on a high note with the perfect prediction. Then we got to talk about the two guys that are leaving the Makuuchi division, making room for the aforementioned Midori Fuji and Akiseyama, that being Enho and Kotoyuki. Enho had a 3-12 record from Magashira 11, and Kotoyuki obviously missed the last tournament for Magashira 15, so both of those guys are down in Jiryo for the next tournament. So let's look at how I did, how Mac did, and we'll talk about how Leonid did as well in the predictions. So if we're just looking at the order of things, this is very different if we're looking at the correct rank. But if we're just looking at the order of things, I got 20 exact predictions out of a possible 42, 48%. And then I had 8 Rikishi at the correct rank, but the wrong side. So 28 total Rikishi at the correct rank. Once again, correcting for the Komusubi mishap. We'll get to that. So 67% correct Rikishi at the correct rank. Huge asterisk. Mac, his computer and himself, he had 26 exact predictions. And we don't need to put an asterisk next to it because he did not create the extra Komusubi slots like I did. And then he had 6 additional at the correct rank, but on the wrong side. And so that actually gives him 32 total at the correct rank. And then, Leonid, how did you do on this one?
So I have to bow to the computer on this one as well. I had 22 exact predictions and 8 additional ones where I was at the right rank, but on the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I had 8 or 9 additional half rank misses, which is pretty annoying. For Guess the Banzuke, where like if you switch who is at 12 West and 13 East, you get no points for that. But you know the scoring rules are the same for everybody, so it is what it is.
Yeah, that's what always gets me with the Guess the Banzuke, because I usually get a lot of the off by just a half rank. So on this one, I had 16 off by just a half rank, but half of them was like a guy at Magashira 12 West instead of Magashira 13 East. So I don't get any points against the Banzuke for that, even though they're off the same amount as the guys that are Magashira 12 East versus Magashira 12 West. And I always feel like I was just going to say, I always feel like when I miss it on Guess the Banzuke, I have far more where they're like West side and he should have been on the East side, but at a lower rank. And so I don't get any credit for them. I feel like I have a lot more of those happen where they're just on the wrong side of the same rank.
Yeah, and people have complained about it on the forum for years, and a lot of people agree. I think with that, with the logic that it doesn't make any sense. But the game has been running for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, and they're just not gonna change how they do it. Who knows why they initially made that decision, but that is how it goes.
No, I get it. You want to just find out who got the name next to the correct number. So I can see the logic there.
Yeah.
So if we kind of look at how we all ended up on the Guess the Banzuke rankings, I didn't do too good because I had those extra Komosubi slots. Everybody basically below the rank of Komosubi was just at the wrong spot in my prediction. And so I ranked 105th out of 126, dropping my overall rank to 45th. So just awful. If I had this exact same order that I had predicted and I just didn't decide to make extra Komosubi slots, I would have tied for 20th in Guess the Banzuke. So would have been a lot more respectable performance out of me. But that was a big risk that I took there. But hey, it doesn't pay off, and we learned some lessons at the end. If we take a look at how Mac did, if he had gotten his prediction done in time and gotten it entered into Guess the Banzuke, he would have finished in a tie for first place in just his fourth basho of predicting Banzukes.
Holy cow.
That's phenomenal.
I
think they go for tiebreakers they use the bottom of the Banzuke as the tiebreaker.
I'm screwed.
The Mac would have lost.
Screwed. That's exactly where I'm weak.
But I think Leonid, you did really good on this one in the rankings, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, my total points weren't that high, but it wasn't a high scoring game. So I mean, out of the 84 possible points, often you see scores. Typically, the winning scores I think are in the 60s. Sometimes they're even in the 70s. This time the winning score was 58. I had 52 points by their rules, which had me 8th.
Wow.
And I kept my second overall ranking in the running like total that they do over the past year.
Why am I the guy that's doing the Banzuke prediction podcast? Seems like I've been passed over by Mac, and Leonid's been doing this a lot longer than I have and has always been better than me. Why am I the guy that's running these podcasts?
Well, I do the blog, so mine is out there.
I'm just a number cruncher, Ryan. You give voice. You give voice to us all.
So let's take a look at how we did based on our scoring system, where we just care how far off were you overall with each of your predictions. It's more of a precise measurement than an accuracy measurement. And so for this one, I did quite a bit better. I had a total of like 28 in the total misses. So if you just cumulatively combined how many ranks I was off for each Rikishi, that's added up to 28, which is actually my third best prediction that I've ever had. With one, I had like 20 or 22 before, and then I had one basho where I only had a cumulative score of 12. But that one's another one with a huge asterisk because it was the goddamn one with Hokuto Fuji and Asanoyama creating the extra Komosubi slots. I had Hokuto Fuji creating the extra Komosubi slot. I didn't have Asanoyama doing the same. So like the Guess the Banzuke score was awful, but my order was so good on that one. Why are all my really good ones the one with the extra Komosubi slots screwing me over? Oh well. It still counts. I still count it. This is my game. I can say what counts. And then Mac, he was kicking my butt in that department for quite a while down the Banzuke until we got to Magashira 12 East.
Yep.
Things kind of went off the rails a little bit, and so his cumulative score was actually 40 on that one. So he was more accurate in his predictions, where he got more people at the right spot, but I was more precise, where my misses weren't nearly as far off as his were.
I'll take it. It's something at least.
Exactly. And so let's just kind of look at some of the Banzuke movement on this one. So we had Shimano Umi had the biggest jump up the Banzuke with 7 ranks from Magashira 17 to Magashira 10, followed by Chiyo no Kuni moving up from Magashira 14 to Magashira 9. This is actually a not a very large moving Banzuke compared to some of the ones that we had in the past, where like Tobizaru jumped up 10 ranks or frickin' Terunofuji jumped up 17 ranks.
Right.
So not as much movement going on in this one. Our biggest droppers were Kiribayama dropping down 7 ranks from Magashira 1 to Magashira 8, and then we had Sato no Umi dropping down 6 ranks from Magashira 11 to Magashira 17. We have 3 Rikshi that will be at their career high rank in Koto Shoujo at Magashira 3. We have Aqua at Magashira 13 and Midori Fuji at Magashira 14, who is also making his Makuuchi debut. So now we get to the snub of the Banzuke, where laid out the candidates earlier. We had Hokuto Fuji, Daisho, Onosho, and then lumped together Meisei and Kaisei as one candidate since their situation is the exact same. Leonid, who do you think deserves to be the snub of the Banzuke this time?
I mean, I guess if you accept the decision making on creating extra Sanyaku slots, I'd have to say Onosho. I think the hardest luck guys are definitely Daisho and Hokuto Fuji.
Yeah, and I don't accept their decision making. So
clearly,
my vote was going to be for Daisho. I think he had the stronger create a new Komusubi slot argument than Hokuto Fuji did, since Daisho was higher ranked here. So Mac, you need to cast the tie-breaking vote. Who will be our snub of the Banzuke? Will it be Onosho or will it be Daisho? This is a very prestigious award. There's a lot on your mind here as you got to get this right. There's a lot writing on this.
I have to give it to Daisho just for where he was, for his performance. I was leaning toward Hokuto Fuji, but no, for me, it has to be Daisho.
That's fair.
And then the luck of the Banzuke candidates. We only had 3. We had Mitake Yumi being able to hang on ahead of people who deserve to be in front of him, like Hokuto Fuji and Daisho. We had Kagayaki, who we went into quite a bit, and we also had Miyogiryu, kind of the similar situation as Kagayaki, just never seems to drop down as far down the Banzuke as he should. So I think I was giving this one to Kagayaki in kind of a landslide. His is the most, this doesn't make sense. I don't know why you are here. There's at least 1 or 2 people who clearly deserve to be ranked ahead of you, and it's mind-numbing to see how you ended up here.
Yep, Kagayaki.
Hands down, Kagayaki.
All right, so that is going to wrap up our Banzuke review for the Hatsu Basho. So thank you so much, Leonid, for stopping by and just enlightening us with your infinitely vast knowledge of the Banzuke and how things go. It's quite a few lessons I'm going to be able to take from this and
we have
put
much
into
to learn.
Future. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, guys. I love the podcast, and this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, hey, we'd love to have you on here some other times if there's some future Banzukes with some head-scratching decisions made by the Banzuke committee. We'll be more than happy to have you on to help us explain why the rankings happened the way they did.
Tell us why we suck. Honestly, that's what we're looking for here.
Yeah. So if you don't want to tell us how we suck, absolutely do not go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 1-star review. Tell us how good we are. Go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review or your favorite podcast listening service. You can also check out our social medias at Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Grand Sumo Breakdown. We've got a blog where you can check out all of our blog posts. I know Mac has been active over there recently.
Yes, in fact, we've got another little something coming in the pipe. There was another American tournament I will be reviewing.
Ooh, fantastic.
But if you want to tell us how we're doing, berate us, say how great your predictions were, or hey, if you got a line in on the councils over in Japan that can gladly come over and yell at us, drop us a line at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com or give us a call at 805-613-7866. That's 805-613-SUMO.
And just want to note something. Jake mysteriously disappeared in the middle of this episode. He had a dog emergency, so we let him run off and take care of that. That is why you did not hear his voice after about the halfway point of this episode. So there's no controversy there.
Well, you sound just like Jake, Ryan. It has already been established that you and Jake are the same person.
I have to be honest right here. I I stopped doing my Jake impression halfway through. I was just so happy that we had Leonid here
it.
that I got distracted and I just dropped the Jake thing. There's really only ever been 3 people on this podcast, me, Fleric, and Mac. But we do have our Hatsu preview episode, which will be coming out halfway through next week. We got the Basho starting, fingers crossed, on January 10th. It's going to be a great one, so we will see you for our preview episode.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time,
Throw your salt high.
And keep moving forward.